a lot of things in flux.
Oh, yeah. Let's do this.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Yeah, I like that. That's so nice. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back. Thanks for sacrificing your Saturday morning to learn something about film. I'm Rebecca Cook. I'm the Vice President of Spokane Film Project. We are a local nonprofit organization who really focuses on networking all of you beautiful filmmakers and making our film community much stronger through that. We have free membership. Free membership. How many of you are members? Excellent. If you are not a member and you want to go to our website, under the About tab, it's how to join. It's super simple. I'm in charge of membership, and I'm super a pushover about it. So just, join. We'd love to have you. We are so honored today to be having our fourth and final panel of 2019. If you missed it before, we had a great one on writers. We had a wonderful one with unions, and we had a fantastic one with producers. And today, you guys got to top this. We've got directors, so no pressure. After after our moderator, Devontae Smith, is finished with his questions, we will open it up for your questions, but there'll be time at the end. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'll hand it over to Devontae.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, so sitting here with these three directors, each different stages of their life and career. These questions are formulated just to kind of help you guys get to know them, but also get to know their work and craft. So let's start off here. Just going to have you guys introduce yourself, tell us how you guys got started in the business.
Who goes?
You go first.
Yeah.
You're closest.
My name is Sean Finley. I'm a director, obviously. I got started in the business sort of from the advertising side of things. I went to school for design, and then I sort of picked up a lot of the video stuff along the way, and started doing music videos and other short film projects on the side. And sort of learned it that way. Didn't go to film school, just sort of self-taught mostly.
My name is Juan Mas. I got into it through, whatever I always wanted to do. So mostly through theater and film stuff through college, and then worked my way up working as a production assistant, an intern before that, and then worked my way up.
So you guys didn't go to film school.
I went,
Am I the only one that went?
I didn't spend a lot of time there. That was the problem.
Charles Costanza. I went to WSU. They actually had a film course there, film program, cinema program. I was one of the last of the 10 or 13 students that graduated there. Worked in television as a production assistant, worked my way up through as a producer-director locally here, moved over into a smaller markets in Yakima, came back, worked 5 years at KSPS back in the 80s and 90s, and then I left for about 23 years to go overseas, and I worked in education mostly, producing educational content for 12 years overseas. And then I came back and I was over in Seattle at the PBS station over there when my boss over here called me back and said, the guy that replaced you back in the 90s left. Are you interested in coming back? So now I'm back. And I've been back for about a year and a half.
So kind of already seems like one of my questions has almost been answered, but 2 out of the 3 haven't gone to film school. And one of my questions is, do you think it's essential to go to film school to be a good filmmaker?
I think it's important to have experience and some kind of piece of paper to get you in the door in terms of getting in the industry. Design, you probably have a degree in design. I think it's important to show the industry or who you're trying to get jobs with that you've gone the hard yards in some respect. So I think that's important. And I think it's important to stay active personally in your craft. But having a degree, you should have some kind of piece of paper to get you inside the door. That's my feeling.
So technically, I did go to school. I just didn't go a lot. My problem was I was more motivated by the projects as opposed to the classroom work. I went to San Diego State and did theater and film with an emphasis in directing. I missed finishing the degree by one class. Went off and started working in theater in New York, and then came back to California, got a gig in PAing for a film in California. Went back to try to go back and finish that one class, and they said, well, now it's actually 5 classes. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. But I agree with him 100%. I think that the schooling plays an important part, and I think it's not so much film school, but what I walked away from my education was it was pretty broad because of the theater and the film, where literature and English played an important part, art history played an important part. All those things played an important part in my time when I was going to school, where it was all film, so it wasn't digital, right? We're not getting into the computers, we're not getting into the graphic and design stuff at that point yet. Those things played an important part in forming the type of director and filmmaker that I wanted to be. And I still think that's an important component. Do you have to get a film degree? I don't know if that's essential, but at least in the getting some kind of an understanding and a good solid grasp of storytelling, be it through literature or through art, because art to me is storytelling. You're presenting a single frame, if it's a portrait or if it's a statue, you know, you're still communicating a message. So all those things kind of add up.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously the fact that you have a degree on a certain level shows that you've got that level of maturity, that you're willing to commit on that level. Is it a for sure thing? No. I mean, you can obviously be completely self-taught. You could learn everything you need to know on the internet if you were really, really committed to it. But I think that, and again, I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who's in the advertising industry. When we hire people, we do look at their resume and see did they go to school for something, but we also look at their portfolio. And I think if you've got a good enough portfolio, that can speak louder than just having an education.
Activity in your craft.
Yeah.
Outside, washing dishes or doing some other
Totally.
job is very important.
Yeah. But I guess the takeaway there is whether you're doing it the traditional route or you're teaching yourself, you do have to demonstrate some level of commitment to it. And I think that's more important than anything.
Well, I think the word that you just used is really important, understanding that it is a craft. So there's a commitment to that craft. It's educating yourself on that craft, either by hands-on practicing or doing research. And today it's a lot easier, obviously, like you said, with the internet, being able to YouTube, whatever you're considering looking into or getting a better understanding of.
Well, let's see. Well, that being said, you guys use the word craft a lot, and to me at least, craft is something that you work on every single day. A lot of filmmakers are starting out at different stages, either going to school or not going to school. I want to ask, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to create a life with filmmaking?
Well,
If life is too much of a hard question.
If I took one class in film school, and it wasn't a great film school because they were kind of closing it out, but it was film history, and it was exposing yourself to the breakthroughs of the pioneers in film, following action, close-ups, different political genres that affected the filmmakers, and being exposed to that. I think it's just vital. And today, it's seeing what's on television, what the trends are, what they're doing. What are the people with money doing? What are the people that are purists doing? And studying that is a good foundation to keep yourself, to jettison yourself into the industry. So.
Well, I think the important word you just said is that studying. You're never stop being that student, right? You're constantly looking not just at your own medium, but you got to be looking at other art mediums and what they're doing and how that's expressing itself and how that can influence yourself, you know. I mean, one of the people that I highly respect, Soderbergh, for example, is like he likes to take classic movies and he deconstructs them and tries to figure out if I did it differently, can I still get the same component? You know, it's you can't stop studying that craft and doing it.
Yeah. I watched Tootsie last night. I don't know how many times I've watched Tootsie, but it's a great film in terms of transition, scene transition. There's always something at the end of the scene that pops you to the next scene, and it's just because I'm editing something right now, which I'm struggling with getting from one scene to another or one idea to another, and Tootsie's just a great. You know, and last night I was going, oh, this is a good class I'm taking right now. You know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, everything you guys said is, you know, completely apropos here, but I would say looking at stuff outside of film is equally as important, you know, especially if you're going to be on the creator side and just thinking at it from like a storytelling perspective. Lately, I've just been trying to read everything I can get my hands on just to try and like get stimulus from something other than just like watching movies and dissecting them. So I think it's sort of a give and take there, but yeah, both parts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it seems like each of you guys draw like influence from years of, you know, learning your craft. You mentioned Tootsie, you mentioned Soderbergh, you mentioned just growing up and learning everything on your own. How has your upbringing in life kind of influenced your work as a whole?
The pain.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if the question means my personal upbringing. I'm the first one of my household and my entire family that got into the entertainment business. There are more business-minded individuals. There are more just a different world. You know, there are literally two of us in the family that are in the industry, and the other one is my cousin's youngest kid, who I helped have PA and stuff in the past. So the influence I think would be is just the work ethic aspect. I would say I come from a Latino family that has migrated to this country. They built a family. They built their own careers, and some of them struggled. Some of them went through hardships as they were going to school to get themselves. It's just not giving up aspect. I think definitely plays a big part in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that work ethic kind of falls over to that side.
I think everybody has a story. Everybody has a past. Everybody has their own upbringing, and I guess it's a choice of bringing those qualities of what you learned in your family or your friends or your main influence into your work. So, I mean, my family, I grew up in a military family, you know, very proud, Marines, soldiers, and but I was the youngest and the most rebellious. But I still have that, and the most left, but I still have that patriotic feeling for this country. And in many ways, even though I take a different point of view, that always comes back, and I sometimes struggle with it, and sometimes I highlight it just because of my own upbringing and my respect for my siblings that took a different road, you know. I got a brother who was FBI and Vietnam veteran and hard-nosed, straight, right down the line, and now he's writing novels, you know, and he's taking what he learned and very much bringing it into his own creative force.
Those
So
life experiences.
I think we should all tap into how we were brought up and bring that into our work. You know, you can't help but not have that, but it's a choice of how much you're gonna use.
I agree with you, and I think it's also a mistake to deny that.
Yeah.
Right? Don't fight against it. like similar. I mean, my family's very far right, almost all of them. There's like 2 of us, 3 of us that are not, right? But that's fine. But that means there's been some heavy discussions over that table, you know. But you bring all those perspectives in. You know, you're able to bring those perspectives into telling your story. That's your natural background. You cannot deny that existence.
I grew up in a family where we did not have a television like most of the time I was growing up, and hated it at the time. Thought it was like the worst thing ever because, you know, I'd go to school on Monday and all the kids would be like, "Oh my God, did you see that thing last night?" I'd be like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never seen Transformers or whatever." But my dad and my mom made a big deal out of like taking us to the movies all the time, and so like that was like my main sort of cultural window when I was growing up. And so that combined with like lots and lots of free time for like imaginative play as opposed to just sitting in front of the TV, I think sort of made me want to do movies later on in life. And I think that combined with the Catholic guilt that got carried all the way through adulthood has sort of framed a lot of the stuff that I've ended up making.
Makes for a good theme.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I would agree. Like it's a part of you, and you can't help but have that perspective when you start making stuff later on.
Yeah, I like that. It's like the old saying of you don't know your future unless you know your past. I would say.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you guys have all been at this for a while now, very successful. What's harder, getting started or keeping going?
Are you talking career or project?
Let's start on project and then we'll get to career.
For me, getting started is always the hardest part. You know, it just I have to really churn it through my head like for a while, and for some reason I gotta like be able to have it not figured out in my head, but have a solid feel for it before like I will commit to it to paper. You know. But then once I do, it just starts to flow out, right? But it's that early stage. It's like, yeah, I have to kind of analyze it, look at it from all these different angles, and think about it, and before like I actually commit. And sometimes I think I probably linger in that stage longer than I should. But
Well, in terms of craft, I mean, I think we're all creative in terms of having an idea and letting it fester or letting it grow inside you before you start sharing it. In terms of the industry, I work in television, so it's not. I mean, you've got to sell it to other people. You've got to present it in a professional way. You've got to organize it, and that's just still the idea. You've got to become somebody who can pitch an idea to other people to collaborate, because there's one thing about a craft and getting an idea off the ground. There's another thing about lifting the idea with other people, and it's very important. And if you're an independent filmmaker and you got money, you know, that's probably the perfect scenario. You can do what you want. But you know, back before digital, filmmakers spent 90% of the time raising money for their film, for their idea. Nothing much has changed, but me in television, I have to have a good idea, but I have to present it in a way that I bring people on board, and that's really difficult in terms of projects. So
I've dealt with that before.
For me personally, it is easier for me to get started on stuff and harder to keep momentum going because I'll always get distracted with other things, and I'll have a bunch of ideas and want to try and do them all at once. I think through my day job, I really have had to learn that part about bringing in other collaborators and selling ideas like you were talking about. If you can't like explain succinctly what it is you're trying to do, then it's very hard to get people on board to help you out with what you're doing. And you know, that's just the reality of like making films. Like you can't do it all yourself, so you have to be able to explain in a way that other people can get excited about and get on board with. So that's a big part of it.
Well, yeah, and that's a whole skill level. I mean, like the one thing I really did take really out of the program that I went through was actually from the theater side, because they had more of the directing focus. And my directing mentor was like, okay, you need to not be an expert at it, but you need to have an understanding of all the different roles that work with you. So who you're going to be collaborating. So like he forced all of us to take the wardrobe classes, the acting classes, the design classes, and it's to be able to understand and have their vocabulary so that you can express your concept in a vocabulary in a way that it's enthuses them and actually get them to collaborate with you. And I took that same philosophy and did that with the film stuff. Like I worked a bunch of different departments, so I have a good solid understanding of those departments' work. In no way am I that expert to work in those departments, but I can communicate to them in such a way where they can understand what I'm talking about. They can see how they're playing a role in what I'm trying to do.
It's a project management skills that you need.
Yeah.
But it's also giving everybody ownership of the project too.
Yeah.
And giving them credit and ownership so they buy in on because it's a craft. You got an idea and it's your baby, but you can't do it alone, like you said. So you've got to bring everybody on board, and you've got to keep them excited about it throughout the whole project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it seems like a really valuable skill, not even a skill, just something like everyone needs to have inherently, is just being able to work with people, get them excited, because honestly, if you're working with someone for months on months and they're just one of those people that dull the energy, you don't want to work with them. You want to keep that energy going. You guys have been talking about like your different projects and different professions, because you work with DH, you do film and TV, and you work with KSPS. I've wondered when you're when creativity is waning, like how do you guys keep that up? How do you guys stay fresh in this new age where ideas are just being thrown out left and right?
Well, I think it's easier now, especially with the new age, and you'd be able to get online and go watch something. I mean, I'll do anything from a TED Talk all the way through just go to the museum and go check out some local art stuff, or the first night's events here in town. Not looking for inspiration per se, but just going to it and let it just absorb me, and then from that, I find a lot of times. But since my medium is mostly television and film, primarily, when I'm really struggling, I'll go back and watch something like a Tootsie, or a film that I really admire, and it just inspires you to go, okay, I can do this, right? And get yourself up and running again. It's that extra little bit of fuel, but you can find inspiration. I feel you can find inspiration almost anywhere. I mean, in a coffee shop. I'm sitting in the coffee shop thinking, and I'm watching the interaction between some people. I'm like, that's a great little story. Right? And then you taking that little bits and letting your mind just run with it.
I think it's natural for filmmakers and people that want to get into the industry to always have ideas. I mean, they might not always be good ideas, but that's what I used to say in job interviews. I'm never short of an idea. They're not always great ideas, but you're going to have to shut me up, because I always got an idea. And to this day, I'm still throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks in terms of getting everybody else on board or getting an idea going or seeing how it will evolve. So, but, I do things outside. I go up in the mountains, I go fly fishing. I stop and I don't talk for the whole day. I'll get away, and I don't know if that rejuices me, but it's sort of a balance.
Yeah, it balances you, right? It balances you out.
In my day job, just money's a pretty good motivator for just continuing to go. I mean, obviously, if I'm not doing...
I was going to say deadlines, too.
Yeah.
Boy, that really puts
Client
the fire
breathing
under
down
you.
your neck doesn't hurt. That's, But I think another one that kind of is always in the back of my mind is like, it's easy to get caught up with like the creative aspect of it, but I think just like doing that work, the more you do it, the better you get at it, the better you get at coming up with multiple ideas, the more that you're just doing the process helps you to, I don't know, just like push on through and go to the next thing. Like I think there's something to like the muscle memory of doing it.
Sure.
Like helps you to
Yeah.
do it better,
Yeah.
you know? So I always, you know, with my personal projects, I'll get stuck on stuff. I'll be like, oh, this is going to be terrible, or it's not good enough, you know, all that sort of self-doubt. And if you just keep going forward, a lot of times you'll figure out a solution, even if it seems terrible for a while. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another question I had kind of pertains to your work again. When you guys are working on a project, when do you think it's done? Like, when do you feel it's at its stopping point? Because, I mean, me as a creative, I could work on something and make sure it's perfect to the last minute. But like you said, there's deadlines and there's people waiting on this stuff to get done. So,
I think it depends on the project for one thing.
Yeah.
But when I approach an idea or a subject matter, I make it a point of knowing the end. Either the end of the song or the end of the theme, or so when I'm out shooting or something, documentary, informational, I'm listening for that end bit. I was out interviewing a Vietnam vet, a vet last month, and he said a line, and I knew that was going to be my end point, and that helps me backload the story, you know. And of course, if you've got time limitations or something, you know when the end is.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the project. Now, you can get the bones down and everything, and then you start filling in the beauty and the nuances and the transitions and the color and everything. That can go on and on. I show my things to people. A lot of filmmakers or a lot of people in my industry will protect their stuff till it's on air or till they have to go on because of their egos or something. I learned not so long ago to put my ego aside and really grab people in out of the hallway and show them little bits and saying, is this working for you, you know, from whatever I'm. And when you get to the point where you're assured that it's meeting its goals, that it's talking, that it's doing its job, and I think that's when you start putting it away.
Yeah.
But
I like what you said about putting your ego aside and taking other people in and asking them what they think.
ego's important because it's your vision, but at some point you're creating something for an objective, you know, to relate a message or something. You can think that message working, but sometimes you lose perspective because you're right in the middle of the project. You need outside people that don't know sometimes.
Yeah.
It's those blinders, right? Because you're like, you have a goal and intent, you're like, oh, it's there. And then you present it to somebody and like, oh, they saw this.
Yeah.
Oh, my, wait.
Don't you see it?
Don't
It's
see
right
it.
there.
So you have to relook at it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, in film and television, obviously we have deadlines. And especially if you're hired as a director for a film or television, there's a schedule, there's a timeline, there's a financial cost to keeping to that, right? Not all of us can be Woody Allen and reshoot the movie from scratch if we don't like it. Yeah. So there's that component where you have to, and I like what you said, because as you were saying it, I went, oh crap, I do the same thing. It's like I know my beginning and I know my end, and I know those 2 points, and in that middle, that's where the craft and the art, storytelling, and the beauty of it comes. So even on these other projects, there are moments where you got to go, okay, I have to move on to the next thing. I have to, you know. So there's a lot more maybe compromising in a sense, but you still can stay true to your original intent.
Yeah.
On personal projects, funny enough, over the years have now gone more to like Woody Allen-esque concepts, I guess, because it's my own project, so I have the freedom to stop. I had a short that I did like 4 years ago, it made sense. It was kind of like what you said. Like I had, it's there, right? And I showed it to a couple people, and they're like, I'm like, what do you mean, you know? So it's like, all right, what's wrong? So I literally stepped away from it for a year, brought on a new editor. We looked at it again, we tried it again, and then found like so from the day that we shot it, 3 years later, we finished the project. But I felt, now I feel like, all right, now it's a much better storytelling project. No, it's not the original concept I had, but it's a better storytelling project now. Do I think it's done? No, I probably could go at it some more, but I got other projects I want to play with.
Yeah, and it's just like a learning stepping stone. Like if you're not happy with it, it's just something you learn from and get better after.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, that we get this concept that we can't fail. No, we should fail. Because we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. And particularly, I think it's true in everything you do in life, but in particularly in our medium. When it doesn't work, you're like, all right, that didn't work. I'm not gonna do that again. But you're gonna remember that when you're approaching the next project that you're working on.
Yeah, I think it's like a combination of really like, you got to have a plan to get started, but having that flexibility to adapt and change direction as things change. Because sometimes you get halfway into a project and you're like, this is not turning out how I thought it would.
Right.
I'm gonna have to like do a course correct here, and you know, and sometimes it might affect the actual ending of your project, or sometimes it might just be a different way to get to the ending. So I think it's sort of that give and take of like, you got to start somewhere, but you got to be adaptable as you go along. For sure.
I think rigidness will actually kill your project.
Totally.
Well, it seems like creativity-wise, like you guys have that down, but with every filmmaker, there seems to be that point where business and finances come into play. How does that affect your guys' art? Save that one for this time.
Look, money doesn't matter, man.
Well, first it starts off with whose money is it,
Right.
Yes.
right? So if it's your own money, you can do whatever you want with it. When it's somebody else's money, you are paying to someone, and you can't be, what was it? Michelangelo was fighting with the Pope about the Sistine Chapel. He was designing it for years, but he was still getting paid. Well, that's not the way it works today, So there is a bit of understanding who you are working for and what story do you both agree you're telling with their money. So that becomes a challenge. That's the business side of it, besides schedule, timing, and all that, because the more that people sometimes over-embrace it and sometimes I think under-embrace it at the same time. This is a business. It's still a business.
Yeah.
You're still a business. You still have a profit margin you're supposed to reach, but at the same time, you're trying to do an artistic venture with it. So it becomes a challenge.
I've never spent my own money on my projects. It's all, because I've worked for television stations and universities and things. It was more of what I said earlier about having an idea and being able to pitch it properly. But when I say pitch it, I mean getting the finances and getting the ownership of the people that sign the checks onto the project as well. I think that's very important. So. I've always treated it like this is a good idea and this is what it's going to do in terms of marketing or promotion or whatever, or information or documentary, and giving ownership to the people that where the buck stops with their finances is very important. So. I've been too chicken to do a freelancer, do my own project.
It isn't that easier. But I think that's a valid point that you're bringing up. It's also having an appreciation for that side that you in today's world, in today's market, you have to understand the business side of it, because if you go in there blindly and just think you're some auteur and they're going to give you whatever you want, that's not going to happen. And your story's going to get chopped out at the knees. So to protect your story, the more you understand the business side, I think the stronger your story can be delivered, you know?
Yeah.
There's a project I'm working on right now, personal side project, where I actually went out and I tried to get a bunch of different sources of funding to do it, grants and other stuff. And I got shot down like multiple times, and I sort of had to make a decision at that point. Okay, am I going to drop this project completely, or am I going to revise it in such a way that we can basically do it for free? And I decided to go that route. It meant changing the project quite a bit in scope and it wasn't in scope, but I think it'll turn out good. It'll be completely different than what it originally was. But again, it was like I think that was a learning experience for me, actually, in terms of I don't think I was explaining what I was doing quite right, because nobody seemed to think it was a good idea. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting give and take for sure.
Yeah, I think in public television and doing nonprofit, as a producer, you look for the need. So, and you see if the tools that you have and the organization you're with can help that need. And that's a good place to start. So, for instance, I saw a need last year when I was working with some STEM professors that they were stopping education, the K through 5 science and math in certain parts of North Idaho. So I saw a need that maybe, because we have a television station and we have the ability, that maybe we should produce modules or some kind of project. So that's grown from that, seeing that need. Success of that project changes when other people come in, whereas for this project in particular, we had to do research on the educational need, but we also have an arm to go out and see if corporate would be involved funding something like that. So this project has shifted from a classroom educational thing to more of a corporate involvement. Success of projects, when you're dealing with just not your idea, but different levels, success comes from maybe giving up ownership of it for the success of it. And because this project, which I saw pretty much K through 4, STEM education for young kids, it's now evolving into something else because corporate is becoming more involved, and they have their reasons for writing checks for you and stuff. But I want to see it done, so I've had to give up my ownership of it to see the success of this project. And it's a decision that I had to make, So you're always dealing with things like that.
That's a fine balance too, because it's giving up that ownership without giving up your integrity of what you want to do, right? And I think it's challenging, but it's a fact, unless you have a gazillion dollars in your back pocket to give it up.
It will be very hard for me to go back to this one project I'm thinking about, knowing that the style, the approach, the message is going to be different now because somebody else is paying for it. So, and then there's another project, about the same time, because I always got ideas being throwing up against the wall. I'm going to keep closer to me, and I've only shared it with a few people because it's an important project for me personally. So that will be a little harder to bring in my collaboration will be more limited and more specialized.
So it becomes more like the thing along the lines, I feel it's like you either just planting the seed and having a bunch of people help you make that grow, or you're completely cultivating it yourself. Right. And you have to make that decision. Which project is that for you?
Definitely, it seems like you guys care about the craft and your work, not just in the sense of like the final product, but as you were saying, you were talking about taking a step back just to make sure that kids get the funding and the education that they need, which is something that, at least when I was going to film school as wanting to be a director, I never thought about those situations of wanting to step out and do something that's furthering not just art, but something more in general. One thing I've always wondered is, like, as a filmmaker, do you think they have a responsibility to culture at all? Like, do you feel that being a creative person makes you or needs you to allow to tell a certain story to kind of better the community?
I think it's up to the individual a lot. I myself try to find a balance. I mean, being with public television, I mean, our mandate is to engage and educate. But at the same time, I've got a little cooking show, online cooking show that I do because it's just fun.
Yeah.
And it's a bit mindless, but there's a theme to it. So I try to find the balance, but I think as people that really want to pursue film, we have a natural passion for the process and for the message. And because we live in this society, it's a perfect avenue for us to address cultural issues, scientific issues, things outside the box that we might not have the power to do, but because we're passionate about our craft, it allows us to do that. So, but I think it's a balance.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're storytellers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of storytelling has always been to hold up a mirror to the human condition and us as beings, question it sometimes, sometimes point out certain things. And I think that's true of art as a whole, right? And we fall in that category. I think that your first, at least my personal belief is my first goal is just to be the strongest storyteller I can, no matter what that story is I'm telling. I don't care if it's a feature, or if it's a television show, or it's a commercial, or if it's advertisement for better education for the kids, making sure that that message is being delivered as best it can be. It doesn't, but I also think culturally, there's the discussion that is not a lot now is about what lens it's being told at.
Yeah.
A good storyteller, I feel, can tell almost any story and can tell it well. But where culture becomes a component, where that lens is important, is a good example for me is I can tell a Latino X story strongly because that's my background. I can tell you a stronger story directly about Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and Colombians because that's my family's background. So the more that it's part of me, the stronger my perspective presentation can come from. But it's layers, I don't know, it's layers, and culturally I think that's the important part to look at it. That we need to open up those avenues so that there can be more lenses being told out there. So we're getting more perspective so that the smorgasbord of our storytelling is actually much different in palettes.
Yeah, I think it's, it's foolish to think that stuff that you put out there will not have some sort of effect on the culture as a whole. So I think there's a responsibility as filmmakers that you have to be aware of the impact that your stuff has. I mean, not like in a, selfish way, but more in any message you put out there is going to have some effect on the world. So you got to be conscious of that. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is that you've got that responsibility, but also it's got to be in service of the story, no matter what. You have to have it work for the story you're telling. You have to, it's obviously nobody wants to be served like a heavy-handed message that seems out of place in the thing that they're watching. So, yeah.
Well, and I think also a combination of it is sometimes it's not a message, sometimes it's just provoke thought, which I'm a bigger fan of. Instead of telling me what to think, make me go think.
Right.
You
More
know?
Stimulate that
questions than
idea.
answers.
Yeah, more questions than answers. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting toward the end of my career in a lot of ways, and I'm trying to push the envelope even more. Maybe because I'm getting older and I don't care what people think more. So, I don't know. Get off my lawn. So, yeah, I'm really trying to get people a little bit more fired up about certain things,
Yeah.
and I'm finding that more important. So, it's just ebbs and flows.
Yeah, totally.
You know. What was your question?
Well, my next question is, with technology and culture becoming so social media aware, what is your take on social media? Has it influenced your work in the industry? Do you use it in your work?
You've got to use it.
You can't ignore it,
You
right?
can't ignore it. PBS as a whole, as a network, struggles quite a bit because of our audience is traditionally older audience or a very young audience, and then we lose them at the network. We lose them at 9, 10, 11 when they get sick of Sesame Street and they go off and they do their own thing, and then they come back when they have kids. So PBS as a network, I know, is struggling to keep those, and social media is one way to do it. But many times they're behind the trends and everything.
Yeah.
So locally, I'm always looking for ways to engage our audience online and socially. So the tools are there. It's getting everybody else on board and trying to tap into.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I'm attracted to working with younger people on things like this.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
To me, it's like pitching on social media, almost in
Yeah,
a sense. Like you
totally.
gotta get them wanting to work with you or work with your idea.
and it comes down to the way you do your production too. You know, you're shooting for digital, or you're lighting, you're telling the story for digital. I went to a workshop in LA this last year where the girl was going, well, if you shoot this way, you got to remember to shoot this way. It's, you know, and I'm going, yeah, of course. Yeah. But it kind of lends itself to the idea that you've got to think on different platforms all the time now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing, but it makes it more of a challenge.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's true with film and television too. I mean, you have to think of it's not just one platform anymore, it's landing, right? So your framing, your conceptual concept of your framing has to slightly, you have to think, okay, am I gonna be able to cover all the platforms this way? But the social media concept, I don't think film does it as much as television. Television, I think, does it a lot more. Where it is a marketing tool. It engages the audience per episode, preseason. You know, is it Instagram? I mean, now it's Instagram. It's tweet. You know, it's all of it, right? I mean, Facebook is even like been pushed over to the side already, because if you're like 30 and under, you're not even on Facebook anymore, right? So it's all these other, and being aware that this is how you're going to build an audience base, you have to be aware of it. And you cannot, and I love your point there, where you got to look to, I got to look into my kids are 18 and 16, they're telling me, oh, we don't do that anymore, we do this, you know? And I'm like, oh, okay, got it. That's the direction things are moving.
Yeah.
Trying to be ahead of the curve. It's a great way to engage an audience even before your production started.
Yeah.
I think films are going to start doing it more, but they're still old school in their approach of certain things.
Yeah, because the film industry is changing so much. Like when I was going to school, like social media was something, and then ever so, it just keeps evolving, and technology evolves, which makes the industry just change itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a real like love-hate relationship with social media.
Me too.
I mean, obviously, just because of my job, like we're dealing with that stuff all the time. But I think that like from a creative standpoint, it really can skew your perception of the world and can be, in some ways, like creatively overwhelming when you're having to deal with that much stimulus on a daily basis. But the flip side is, how else are you gonna like reach people anymore? So.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. So this question, I love. What is one mistake filmmakers make regardless of experience?
Okay, you start with you answer.
Yeah.
I guess for me it would be overthinking a project, in a sense. Like you said, you would linger on starting a project and you would be on that process for too long, to the point where, at least for me, it makes me backtrack and rethink a lot of things and almost have to be like, all right, I want to scratch this project and almost give up hope just because of how much you've drawn into just like pushing yourself down and stuff.
There's so many things that
so
people
many
make mistakes. I mean, one element I was going to mention when I saw that question was, and I'm amazed that people still do it, is they think of the music at the end of the project.
Oh.
And it's the first thing I think about. And I force myself to do it. Maybe it was upbringing, seeing, the score being done when you're learning about film at the end. The director's finally doing the score for the film. So you think, oh, I don't have to think of music. When I go out and shoot, I've got some music in my head. Either a genre or a particular song or music I've actually found on production music. But for me, music plays such an important role in the storytelling that it's got to be early on in the stage. And I see a lot of filmmakers going, well, I've edited that, now I'll go find some music that will fit my edit. And then you see the rhythm off, and you see them struggling to try to get back in rhythm. So, and it helps with the message, having that in your head. So.
Definitely can affect the editing, as you said, with music.
And listening to music early on when you know what you're starting your project helps your your mind. You're clearing your mind and your storytelling and everything. So.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, when I write, I actually will play certain type of music over and over when I'm working on that project, and that's all I'll listen to.
Heavy metal.
Depends on the project.
Yeah.
Depends on the drink.
Yeah. Whoosh, I don't think I'm ready. You go next.
Okay. I was just going to say, for me, I think a big pitfall a lot of times is not getting enough input early on in a project, not showing your stuff to other people, not doing enough research, all of that stuff. I think you can save yourself a whole lot of hassle and heartache by doing that as early as possible. I always try to front load all my stuff with a lot of that, and then it just makes the whole process easier. So I think that's something that people a lot of times forget. They just think of a good idea and run with it. And,
I used to storyboard my stuff out. I wish I storyboarded more. And I don't know, that's kind of a lost craft now, is really, because I used to study Hitchcock in school, where he said the most boring part of making films is shooting. Because his film was done when he storyboarded, and we don't do that a whole lot anymore. So.
I could barely draw a stick figure, so.
I got a nephew in LA that makes a career out of drawing storyboards.
Yeah. Nice.
So I wish it comes down to budget and everything, but
I guess to kind of echo a little bit both what the stuff you guys were saying, I think it comes down to a balance. It's a balancing act between collaborating with other creatives to make your project happen, but still holding on to what is your vision of what that project's supposed to be like. And I think sometimes the balance, sometimes it goes this way, right? Your vision becomes so that you just cutting the collaboration, doesn't work, or vice versa. You're listening to too many ideas, and it gets muddled, right? It's finding that balance, and every project is going to be different. It's going to be a different balance, I think that's that to me is the biggest challenge that you have to deal with, and being okay with saying, okay, well, that one didn't work.
Yeah. I've had that a lot. Okay, well, I kind of want to take this moment to come back to you guys again. This is off the list.
Oh, wait, we have prepared questions.
This one's the easy one. This one's the easy one. Each of you guys are directors in your own sense, but what made you want to become a director? Like everybody, I guess they want to be a director because they want to be the next Spielberg. They want to be that person who's like, you know, in the spotlight. But what made you guys want to get to this position of telling stories and doing it as a passion?
Well, I bounced around quite a bit, so trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So I was in my mid-20s when I finally graduated and figured out that I wanted to do that. I actually took a little HR test trying to figure out my life a bit, and it said, "Oh, well, filmmaking's one thing," and I'm like, "God damn, you know, I love films and everything."
Yeah.
So I kind of went down that road. But
Need more soak time?
Yeah.
Okay. I tried a lot of stuff in the filmmaking process before I sort of landed on like the writing and directing was what I was good at. I just, shot a bunch of stuff. I, worked as like a audio guy or whatever. And I really love being the person who is sort of bringing everybody to the table. I love like the collaboration aspect of it is my favorite part. And being that person that gets everybody involved and it just kind of brings it all together, I think is the best part of it. I know for a lot of people, they like being the dictator. They like being in charge.
Yeah.
And for me, that's like, I can like take it or leave it. But I think that's, again, like another part that a lot of people overlook is like the collaboration aspect of it is what makes it work. So for me, that was the big draw.
Okay.
Well, I have to echo that. I mean, I actually went through a period where I hated the word director.
Yeah.
Because it made me think like a dictator, like it's this way or no way, and that's never been how I've wanted to do things. It's always been, I have an idea. Here's a seed. Let me use your talents to make this a better idea. Let me use this to make it a stronger story. So I think the idea, an old-time producer that I worked for, he used to call it like a troika, which is like it's a Russian cart with 3 horses, right?
Yeah.
And for him, all the aspects of filmmaking were one of the horses. And he goes, you have to learn how to be just let the horses run, but keep them on a path. Mm-hmm. And that concept to me was like, oh, all right. Mm-hmm. I'm collaborating with people, but I'm going to make sure, our path might go like this a little, but at the end of the day, I know where my end is, and I know where I want to get, and these folks are helping me get there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a lot like what Sean said. It's a lot about the collaboration aspect. It's developing stuff as a group, and then making it stronger.
I think another part in that is that, I'm not sure any of us has mentioned this so far, it's a lot of work. And if you don't like the hard work aspect of it, this is not for you. Like it is just a ton of work, and I really enjoy that part of it.
And it's not just being creative. There's management skills. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's at certain times you'll find yourself being the comforting factor for an individual who's working with you, be it psychological, being just someone they can listen to, finding ways of getting people to feel, like you said best, they're invested in the project because they take ownership on their component. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of there's a lot of people skill stuff that you have to think about. You can't just walk in. You got to leave that ego, like Charles said, outside that door when you walk in, because otherwise, you're going to hit walls really fast.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for people to work with you, too.
Yeah.
So your original question is why we went into it?
I guess the why was because, like, for me in film school, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do as a career, I always thought of it as a job, but, you know, a lot of people work a job and they don't love it. So when you become a director, like, you guys have been going at it for a while now, so you guys obviously fell in love with it at some point in time.
Yeah, I sort of pursued my career between two walls of broadcasting, of television, commercial and PBS. So a lot of projects came my way, or a lot of demands or needs came my way, and I would create that project from that. So I always worked within the parameters of having a manager, having somebody above me, and having to hire people below me or bring on a crew. And so I don't know if I ever wanted to be that, that artist individual.
Yeah.
I was more, I think, like I said earlier, I was too chicken to go down that road, or maybe I had too many bills, too many responsibilities.
Yeah.
I went and I applied for jobs and things like that. So I didn't start my own company. I'm just starting my own company now.
Yeah.
In my later part, maybe I have more confidence now or something. I don't know. But and because of that, I did a lot of different things. I was producer, director, but I shoot a lot of my own stuff. I edit my own stuff. I write my own scripts.
Yeah.
I shot sports. I shot news. I was shooting news in Florida about 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And trying to make my way to where my career objectives or my life objectives now, where I wanted to live, where I wanted to, have my family and everything. So I worked within that industry versus, and trying to bounce around my craft in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Kind of seems like it's like jumping off a cliff for you. It's like you didn't want to do it at first, but then after doing it, it's just like, all right, I like this. I'll keep going.
But you can find freedom within those walls, within those parameters. If you have, if you're blessed with good managers, and I was here back in the '80s and '90s, working with Jim, my manager, and he's still there. And now I'm back working underneath him, and I always called him my best. And I've had a lot of jobs. Okay, I've had a lot of bosses, and a lot of things. And he's one of the top people in my life, so I'm happy to be back there, so.
Let's see. So this is an industry question. So if there's one thing that would make this industry better, or it could be multiple things, what do you think it would be?
More money?
Yeah.
Well, Spokane, you can probably comment on this. We were talking about it earlier when I lived here, and before everything was a cheap car commercial, or they went out and sold a commercial spot, and then the production guy would go out in the afternoon and shoot a really bad commercial. And now I'm seeing a turn, and I think it's. I don't know. You could probably comment more on this in the commercial world, in the ad world, but I see more money coming into the production value, which is a great thing for this size of market.
Yeah.
And that should continue. I'd hate for it to go back. I saw a car commercial on, what's the guy? But he's talking about community. He's not talking about the car. He's talking about the sense of community, and I'm going, wow, somebody got to him. Somebody said, okay, it's about engagement in the community and making yourself, it's not about, the latest car or the price. And I'm going, that's big in this size of market where, most clients and most people are thinking, I want to get things out the door. Well, you do want to get things out the door, but there's a certain way to do it.
Yeah.
And it's been proven that Nike can sell shoes and not even mention Nike. I don't know if Nike can, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of like now we have enough resources and we've got enough of a film community in town that we can all sort of like support each other, give each other job references, all that stuff. So it's sort of this like networking aspect along with there actually being enough work to support everybody. And I mean, that obviously is constantly in flux and changing, but I feel like that's like, just more of that is really what we need.
I mean, locally, yeah, I think that having moved here almost 22 years ago and seeing how the community was the community was small and it's growing, but how collaborative they are. Like, you hear stories like, oh, you want to do that? You should reach out to so and so, and they don't have a problem referring each other to other groups in the community to get that work done. But I also think that on a larger perspective, the amount of platforms that digital media is playing on now, the audience is expecting a certain caliber. So now you can't get away with the cheapy, versions of doing stuff. You have to find a new way to make that message more resonant and better with the audience, or a different approach to market your thing, be it through a social cause. The platforms are causing the audience to be much more intelligent and much more critical of what's being presented to them. And I think that's going to help in the long run, and it forces us as storytellers to be much more aware of what's happening.
I think that's really true, because I remember the other day I met up with you, and then you said you just came from the library because you were researching all some stuff, and I'm just like, interesting. I wonder what he's trying to learn and perfect within what he's doing right now.
Yeah. Well, I think the platforms, multiple platforms, has made the world much smaller. We all can communicate much more on different levels, and in terms of storytelling or marketing, it's breaking it down even more to more catering to individual than to a few years ago. It was groups. You're part of a group. Let's market toward a group. Now it's even being unraveled even more to, oh, you're this person, and the multiple platforms in the industry now allow you to get in front of the person, not just the group. And it's making for more creativity. It's also making for more headache, but I call it more of a challenge, and I think it's a great thing. But I was in LA at that conference, and they were just the ad agency people were pulling their hair out, going, now we got to cater to that person, not that group. It used to be the group, but because of the platforms and the way we can be more subjective toward our marketing or stories or whatever, it can be broken down that way. So, and we should continue to do that in this town in many ways. I mean, it's big enough now, and it's getting more diverse now that we should be able to do that.
Definitely is, and it seems like there's a lot more resources popping up for people to work hand in hand together, like with CMTV. This wasn't here before when I needed it, but now it's here for everyone to use.
Right.
Let's see, final question. Answer this however you wish, but can you tell us about any upcoming projects that you guys have going on? Anything fun or interesting that we should know about?
You should know about, or you will know
about. Should, will.
Well, it's still bouncing around here, but I've shared it with a few people. But it was a project I was starting at the PBS station in Seattle, but because I came over here, I've pitched it over here. And I was actually talking to Sandra Williams yesterday about collaborating on young people that are civic-minded along with young people that are into animation, and creating something with animation and real audio civics for discourse and engagement, especially next year with 2020. So I'm that's going to start hitting the front burner early on next year. Hopefully summer and fall around the elections, KSPS will have something either online or something that will be hopefully engaging to high school and young people about civic issues.
Wow.
So.
At a broader scope, right now, the most immediate thing is, as a member of Spokane Film Project, we got asked to create a panel for the Seattle Film Summit that happens next weekend, which people can still go online and get tickets. And if they actually go to SFP, there's a discount code you can get. There's some amazing panels that they're doing over there, but our panel is actually representing all the independent film festivals in town. So we have a representative from SPIF to Music Video Jams to the Northwest Horror Festival to Slam to the One Heart Native Festival, talking about the challenge of creating festivals and why it's important, which is great, but we're also using it as an opportunity with the help of Spokane Arts and Visit Spokane to promote the crap out of Spokane and its digital production companies and the stuff that we're doing in town. So that's kind of exciting. On the personal side, there's a group of us have gotten together where we're working on developing programming, features, and also television, but also something for the web in 3 different projects and creatively being involved in them differently, like producing and collaborating on that end, and actually writing one and the other. So we'll see what happens with that.
I'm currently working on a bunch of stuff at work that's really boring. I'm not going to go into that. Side project, I've been working for a couple of years on this documentary idea, which is basically around folks that live in Spokane who have like a full-time job and a family and other adult responsibilities, but still do something creative on the side, and sort of that push and pull of how to get that balance in your life, and also how to just be an adult nowadays. So,
Or not.
yeah,
Or not.
or you could be Juan.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think at this moment, I'm going to alleviate over to Rebecca for some audience questions.
Yeah, let's open it up to the audience. Who's got questions? Raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Oh, right here.
I'd like to know more about the process of pitching a story and getting it on screen.
I would too. It's an evolving thing. I think it's presentation, it's tools that you can use. I've seen some pitching competitions in film festivals where they use visual aids, acting. It depends on what you're trying to pitch and who you're going to be in front of. So you got to take that, and it might just be a meeting with a client or something like that. Watch a lot of Mad Men. They do a lot of pitching. I mean, and it's sort of knowing who you're talking to. I mean, I did some sales in my life where I was trying to sell a product at one point when I couldn't get a decent job. But one thing I learned was how to analyze the person that's in front of you. Are they a bottom line person? Are they a detailed person? Do they need this, this, and this, or do they just need that? And once you try to understand and do some research on who you're talking to, it will craft your presentation. But you might be sitting, you might be standing, you might incorporate, like I said, something creative to help sell it. But and find out if there's a need. They might say, yeah, that's great. Who's going to buy that? Make sure. So. I think in an abstract way, I mean, it really, when you break it down, it comes down to what you're trying to pitch and everything. So I don't know if that show where they're trying to pitch their business idea, what is that, the Sharks show?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's, there's a lot of truth in what they're doing in an entertaining way, but you know, it's a worthy art form to try to be good at it. So
Yeah, I think what he said was dead on. You have to know the audience you're pitching it to, and how you can personalize it somehow that you're going to get them excited about the idea of it, right? So the more you know about who you're pitching it to, what their background, if it's a production company, what kind of stuff have they been doing? You know, if it's, I'm assuming the same thing with a client. What kind of product? What's that product trying to do? So it becomes something that they can personally invest in. That's important. But that's doing a lot of homework, and you're constantly. But you still got to walk in. I still think the important thing is walking with at least 3 conceptual concepts to present. One is, like, we call it like the elevator pitch. Like, you have exactly what it takes from one floor to the next floor to pitch it. So it's one sentence, boom, done, right? Maybe one that's a little bit more conceptual pitch, having that, and then one that's a passionate pitch. Having that arsenal, and like he said, paying attention to who you're pitching it to, and feeling how they want to go, then you go, okay, that's the direction I got to go with this. So if this guy's bottom numbers, bottom marketing, all right, these shows have been successful like this. This is why I want to do this, right? What's the famous long pitch for Aliens was always Jaws in space, right? Nail it down to like one simple thing, and they're like, oh, that was successful. Yes, now we can understand what you're talking about, So that's kind of, you have to have so many different things to be able to juggle and be ready to adjust to whoever's sitting across the table from you.
and rehearse it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, rehearse it.
Yeah, I would say, like Juan was saying, like make it as succinct as possible, make it as easily understandable by as broad of an audience as you can, and also have additional information ready if they want more detail, and maybe even have a backup idea or two if they're like, no, I hate that one.
What else you got?
Yeah, exactly. There's also, the internet is fantastic for finding examples of this stuff. The other day, I stumbled across the original pitch for Stranger Things, and look that one up. That's amazing because they were completely upfront about every single reference in that show when they pitched it. They're like, we're going to rip off this, we're going to rip off this, we're going to reference every cultural icon from the 1980s we can, and we're going to be completely shameless about it. Look for examples as well.
And find a way to be unique about it,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you. I might also add, if you're looking for a place to pitch, Seattle Film Summit in next weekend, just to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Who else has a question?
I have so many questions, but I'll do this as a 3-part question. I was going to say, do you guys do leave behinds, like a 1-page leave behind? Do you have one set up? I thought that was something additional for the pitching, like sort of a 1-page description of what you've done that you can leave behind in person.
Yeah, I don't think that hurts at all, like to have something if they need a reference for later, especially if it's somebody who's really busy. Yeah, having like a 1-pager
Sure.
or whatever. Yeah, it's great.
So I was actually looking at the directing part of it. So my 3-part question really has to do with voice and identifying voice. So first, do you have a signature, like how Alfred Hitchcock would like show himself? So do you have a signature, do you think, that you try to incorporate at some point into any of your projects? The second one is, do you have a voice? Like, what is your voice when you write as a director, or when you produce as a director? And then, if you do bring in writers, do you try to match the writer's voice with what you're trying to do, or are you looking just at story?
That's a whole panel in itself.
Come back next week.
Yeah.
We'll cover that whole thing.
I've been accused of having a certain style that music's really important to me, and having that incorporated. Sometimes I'm in a position where at KSPS to try different things, and I try to do different, like I want to do a documentary on a historical documentary next year. That's one thing I've never really done. I've worked on plenty, but you know, a lot of photographs, a lot of, and I'm fighting right now with how I can change that perspective, that look at a certain part of history. I probably, that's probably my voice is trying to be different all the time. But I think you'd have to look at my stuff to say, yeah, right. But you know, you certainly have that going. So
I think coming from the television film world and having to work a lot of times with outside writers, it's what that script makes me think or feel, or immediately visually. It's like very similar. Music becomes very important to me, and usually there's like a visual icon that I grasp onto. But it's what that story's telling me. So I wouldn't say like, you know, visually I have a certain style. It changes depending on what story I'm telling. The style for me has to, the way I approach it visually has to benefit the story. So it won't be the same every time. When I'm writing, no, I'm a little bit more contrived. I love bookends, you know. I kind of like that kind of concept. But really, I think that this is why I'm so big into looking at other art forms and other mediums for inspiration, because you just never know what's going to take you to that place to tell that story. But I think that things that have style, though, I'm not sure if I'm going to express this correctly, carries a lot more weight than when it's just kind of like blank, you know, kind of Wonder Bread told.
Wonder Bread.
I miss Wonder Bread.
Yeah, I try to just do what's going to be best for the story. I mean, I would say, if anything, like my style tends to be eliminating everything that's not necessary, I guess. So really, really trying to simplify things as much as possible. Just because from the advertising side, clients are always like, let's just jam more in there. Let's get as much as possible in a 30-second TV spot. And I'm always like, well, you know, people only have so much information they can retain in their brains. So yeah, simplifying, I guess, is something that I really value.
It's a good one.
Another question? And I've worked this out in the room.
Work the room.
Did we hit all three of your questions?
I think each one of you hit.
Well, an aspect of it? Well done, team. Well done. Well done.
We nibbled at it. And then we nibbled.
Hi. So something I've been wondering about lately is scripts. And, you know, if I was writing a script, who would you send it to? How would you get it to a director that you thought might be able to tell your story in the way that you want to tell it? Because I know different directors have different, like what she was saying, different visions. So how would you get, I mean, does a director have a manager, or is there a place you send it to? Or, you know, are there script writers here that you're interested in working with? I mean, is there a clearinghouse for that? Or have you ever sat down and read people's stories here in Spokane that you're interested in working on getting money for? Yeah. I mean, it's something I've been really interested and curious about.
Well, I'll start with saying pretty much most directors, except for me right now, has an agent or a manager that you can supply material to and try to get them interested that way. But I also would add that wanting to have that experience as a writer, and actually I got to work with Sean this way, where I wrote the script and gave it to him. There was part of the interesting component was like I had to give it away. It's like, all right, you got it now. That's all you. And he took and ran with the story, made the short. He did things differently than I thought of. He did things, certain things I went, oh wow, I never thought of it in that direction. That's a clever way of doing it. So immediately, the first warning is, just because you admire that director does not mean that the director is going to see it the way you're going to see it. as a director, when I'm working with writers, I like to sit down with them and talk and go, I'll ask straight out questions. What is this scene supposed to be about? What is it you're trying to say here? You know, or would it be stronger if we tried something like this and then let them massage it? So it's finding that way of working with a writer and a director. That's a really, really important marriage right at the get-go. And it's important, I feel, as a director, and to respect the writer for his craft, is to get a better understanding of what they're trying to do, and understanding that they're doing it in a one-dimensional piece of paper, and now I'm trying to create a 3D version of that. So it might not be exactly the same, but getting them to be happy and inspired with what they're seeing.
Yeah, I would second that. It's always going to be a give and take and an interpretation, whether you're on the writing or the directing side. I think that you have to, whether you're the director or the writer, appreciate that collaboration and be willing to let go of that part of it, unless you're doing both yourself.
Right.
You know, so. And as far as like, like resourcing or like selling your scripts, there's a million different ways to do that online or in person nowadays. And I think it really goes back to what are you trying to get out of it, and how much do you want to go through to actually get it made. So,
And remember to protect yourself.
yeah.
Make sure you either have it copywritten or WGA register, which you do not have to be a Writers Guild member to register your scripts or your treatments. I think it costs like $20, I think, or something like that. But it'll be registered so that when it's going out on these platforms, you're being protected. You know, you got to think of that aspect, that angle as well.
Great. Another question?
Can you describe your process of directing actors, and what tools do you have in your toolbox when things aren't going well?
For me, my process is depending on the actor, and that comes from the time frame that I went to school in theater and living in LA. There was like a gazillion methods of acting, and taking that philosophy that my directing mentor said, I went and read and studied all of them, again, to understand the vocabulary and the thought frame that method actor, that type of actor would write. And by methods, there's not just one method. There's Meisner, there's Strasberg, there's Hedda Gabler. I mean, there's a gazillion of them. But having an understanding what it is that person is their toolbox. I go from a perspective of getting a sense of, in the audition process, what that person's range is going to be, so I know how far I can push them and where they feel most comfortable. And I'm a type of director that wants to get you out of that comfortable position and put you in a more uncomfortable place as an actor for creative purposes, so that it becomes more genuine and much more immediate to what's happening. I think this is part of that coaching not psychologist, but it is that level where you have to, it's depending on the individual and how you want to communicate. You have one goal, to get the best performance out of that individual, but it's going to be based on that individual and what that individual brings to it. So there is part of the audition process that I personally like to do where it's not about them doing the lines. I just have a conversation with them. And am I going to be able to communicate with them in a way that we're going to be able to collaborate and create together the performance that I would like to see happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you said it earlier, it's important to know the vocabulary from a performance point of view. So taking an acting class, being involved in acting workshops at some level, knowing that you're not going to be acting, you're going to be directing, but knowing where they're coming from and how vulnerable they are as a performer,
Yes.
because it's they have to put themselves out there no matter what the performance is. I had the advantage of working 8 years at a university in Australia where 3 times a year I was directing actors, the student actors, on projects. And I had a pretty good budget to where I had a professional crew working with the final student actors on some really nice projects. 5-minute scene, we'd spend 2 days on it because it was a training module. It was a training process. So I approach that in my professional when I'm working with actors professionally now, where I give them the space. I don't tell them where the blocking is right off bat. I give them the parameters. Here's the frame. You know, here's the living room. Here's go and practice. Go. I go back to ownership a lot in projects, and even when I'm working with actors, you know, they're the actors, they're the performers. You want to get the best performance out of them. You give them that opportunity, and you give them the parameters. I don't put any technical stops on them. If they want to run up and down the hallway and put their head in the trash can while they're doing their lines, let them. You can start putting limits on them if it's impossible or something, but it allows the actor to express themselves in a lot of ways. So, and it was a method that the acting school promoted in terms of screen performance is experimenting and then whittling it down to something that's manageable in terms of shooting and telling the story. So I encourage when you work with actors is give them a wide palette and then start working it back down to reality, to what can work and what can't.
And then to add to that is it's creating that environment, and you're doing it exactly with what you said. It's an environment of, it's a safe place for them to explore as much as they want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a trust that when you tell them, I got it, we're good, we're moving on, they believe that you've got the best performance out of them.
Yeah.
I think
Get
the
it
other-
done by 5.
I think the other part of it is, like I've always tried to get 90% of that work out of the way just in the casting, and not over direct once they're actually on set.
Yeah.
To be able to be like, like you were saying, I trust you. You can handle this. You know this character. Just do it. And then if you're really going off the rails, I'll give you like a note. But other than that.
Yeah. Well, there's that old saying, right? 50% of directing is actually casting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
To oversimplify filmmaking, we have the writing and we have the production and directing that goes along with that. So I come from the production side, and love him or hate him, I'll use Tarantino as an example. He basically said that he didn't start being successful until he started writing his own screenplays. So would you agree with that from somebody from the production side? How important is it, whether you're running a camera or you want to direct or produce, how important is it for you to learn to write as well, to be able to tell your own stories?
Well, I'm in that boat right now. I am just starting to learn the writing side of stuff. And I would say, if nothing else, it gives you an appreciation for everything that writers go through. And I think it's invaluable to know that side of the business for sure. But I think in the writing, you, again, have to think about every single other person's position on set. You have to think about, oh my God, the actor's gonna have to do this, the cinematographer's gonna have to do this, the Foley guy is gonna have to do this in order to make this scene work. So yeah, just from that perspective, I think it's valuable.
Well, I definitely, it goes back to what we've been saying. You get a better understanding, like Sean said. But I think it also makes you a stronger storyteller, having actually done that aspect, right? I mean, Tarantino's a good example where some of my favorite stuff is stuff that he just wrote and didn't direct, you know. But if you don't take that time and opportunity, I don't feel you appreciate the process as a whole. And I think that's the beauty of it. As a director, you have to appreciate every component that makes it happen. You know, from cinematography to the props, to the costumes, to the makeup, to the writing, to the music score, to the editing, and having an appreciation of what those individuals bring to the table to help you make that, and having an understanding of how that element enhances the story, which is what our goal is, right? To enhance that story to be as full of depth as possible. We can't do it without those components.
Yeah, there's plenty for a director to think about, let alone creating the script. I enjoy collaborating with script writers quite a bit. It depends on the project. Documentary is revealing information and ideas and presenting it in a story. So I enjoy that collaborative effort of somebody else bringing the script writing, probably because I'm not really great at it. Some of my shorter stories are told through an interview. I'm using that as narration instead of script. I try not to use a lot of narrative words for my projects. I try to get the person that's telling me the story in a documentary sense, them helping me with the dialogue of telling the story. So it's certain style, but it depends on the project. But I enjoy the collaborative. I don't know if my stuff is any worse or any better because of it. So.
Do you have any more questions?
Just a simple, quick question. So is the auteur director artist really only is his avenue really just independent films then? Other than like someone like Tarantino that has the reputation that he can write and direct and do all that, but for just a director as the artist, is his only avenue, independent films?
I have an issue with that question because it goes back to what I originally said about the dictator director kind of auteur thing. It's as much as I admire Hitchcock, that concept just to me does not make sense. You are a leader in the art form, and you're bringing together other individuals that are talented, and you're working in collaborations. Yeah, you can be a Rodriguez, write, edit, shoot. All your own stuff. Soderbergh's another good example. He's now heavily shooting most of all his own things, especially his small budget stuff. But my question as an artist is, I guess I like the collaboration part of it. So the more that there's more people involved, the better. I don't care if it's independent or if it's studio. And if you get into the studio world, the studio is going to have a voice. If you get in the independent world, guess what? Whoever financed your movie is going to have a slight voice in that. So truly, the auteur concept, I don't think is realistic, nor is it a productive way of approaching this.
Do you find more freedom with the more successful you are in the industry?
Sure, there's more of a trust, right? So, I mean, and Tarantino's a great example. His big claim to fame script writing was True Romance. And that was a Michael Mann movie. Phew, that shot it off. Now, he's started baby steps, and now he's in the position. The more successful you are, it's a business. The more successful you are, the more freedom you're going to have. And that's the reality.
Yeah.
I think
that's the importance of film festivals.
Yeah.
And collaboration and knowing more people in the industry.
Well, I mean, I'm even curious, like in your world, Ridley Scott walks into a commercial set, he's going to get to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Because he's Ridley Scott.
Right.
Sean Finley.
Well, I've heard.
That's a lot.
It's quite the mover and shaker, this guy.
I mean, you're going to get less questions from a client. That's my
Exactly.
point. Or like, oh, are you sure you want to do it this way?
Yep.
Just because he's Ridley Scott.
Yep.
I mean, this is the same thing for you guys?
Yeah, I work in the parameters of we've got projects that come down the pike, or we generate the ideas. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, for example, I guess I was thinking along the lines of people with names. So Ken Burns wants to pitch an idea. How quickly will that turn over?
Yeah, well, he's got his own production. I guess I live in my own world where I was hired, and they know my skill set. They know what I can do. So my ideas are either accepted or developed because they know where I'm coming from. So that's why my question was the more successful you are, or the more you're trusted by the people that are hiring you, the more freedom they're going to give you.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm given, it's great. My little cooking show, it was like a 2-page pitch to management, and they said, yeah, great, run with it. So it's off and running, and it's my own little thing because they know I had the bandwidth to be able to produce something like that, and they trusted me. So I think there's a big trust element in whatever project you're going after. So.
Got time for a couple more questions?
I had a question specifically for Sean. When you guys were talking about the projects that you're working on currently, you're saying you're working on some stuff that's kind of boring. How do you keep yourself motivated and keep that creative energy up when you're working on projects where you'd rather be doing something else or you're not as initially passionate about it?
Yeah. Well, when I said I was, working on boring projects, that would be my day job. So it's stuff where, I didn't choose it. Obviously, it's a company project that I'm working on. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but yeah, my day job is I work for a public relations and advertising firm in Spokane called DH. And we do a lot of government type work, and particularly government and healthcare policy work, which that stuff can get old after a while. But to answer your question, there's always an avenue that's interesting. There's always an avenue to stuff that you either haven't dealt with before or has like a human element to it, or there's always a way to find an interesting angle no matter how boring the work is. So I always try to just focus on that part of it, whatever part of it that's going to appeal to me, or I feel like I can bring an interesting or a unique perspective to. So
Yeah, I try to find challenges within the project,
Yeah.
like involving maybe something that I haven't used before, like animation or original music, or different types of voices. So as a storyteller, you try to challenge yourself inside a project that might not be that exciting. So.
Right. Or you're finding a way that you're going to do it differently, that you haven't done something before, like you said, right? Like, I have never tried going this route with it.
Yeah.
You just, anything that's going to keep you
That's
focused
what's
on the
fun.
end goal, and it kind of becomes the fun part.
Yeah, it's fun.
You got a question?
So I saw the producers one here, and I was just wondering, you guys, it's not exactly clear where the lines are drawn between your roles, and so how does that work with collaboration, and is there a line, and what is it?
Well, it depends what industry you're in and what level you're at. So I'm a producer-director, so I'm given a project and I produce it, I plan it out, I do the scheduling, I hire, and then out in the field I'm directing, I'm pointing, might be shooting, but I'm also blocking and figuring out how I'm going to tell the story when I'm out shooting. And then in this level of industry in Spokane, I'm editing it too. I've been a producer, a senior producer before, where I'm hiring the crew, I'm saying this is the idea I want, and I get somebody else to light it, and that's a lot of my learning stage of giving the crew ownership. So knowing that the person I hired is better than me at doing certain things. So it depends, but in the Spokane market, a director is usually producing. So.
In the television world, a director is basically a gun for hire, and particularly for episodical, unless they're part of the creative team and the writing team, and and they've sometimes worked their way into producer roles, but there's still someone they're going to answer to. So for a good example, for most of you here who know Z Nation, we had a showrunner, and our showrunner was Carl Schaefer, and story-wise, he's who I answered to as a director. We would have meetings, we would discuss character, if I had questions about the story and how it fit with the rest of the season, that was the person I answered to. Financially, there was 2 other producers who were in charge of the financial aspect. I answered to them about, I want this set built. It's cost too much money. You have to figure a different way. So there was people that I constantly have to get approval from, and that's it. Did not have direct contact with the sci-fi and asylum people, but I did get them at the back end on notes. We would get notes from them on our edits. And we would look at the notes, and then Carl and I would sit down and we would decide which notes we were going to address and which notes he was going to go back and fight the battle for, whatever the situation may be. In the feature world, still in the freelance world, you're still hired as a strong creative input, but there's still a producer who brought the finance, and they ultimately have the final say. They usually have what's called the final cut. So even though you shoot the movie, you go and edit your version, the producers get to watch it and then get to make a decision of what changes they want, which is why, I don't know, what was it? I think it was like in the 80s, the director's cut version started coming out, was because of that. Directors wanting to have their own version of the features that they had done coming out. So you're still answering to somebody else until you're at that level where you're the person, you're the director, producer who brought in the finance team, brought in the intellectual property, and completely have ownership of it. But then now you're at that level of being an executive producer as well. If that answers that. I was really long-winded to give you time to get back.
Cool, yeah. In advertising, we drink too much coffee. What was the question?
It was just about the roles of producer and director and how that works.
Yeah, in my day job, I lean heavily on producers and account executives to take care of a lot of the duties of producing. I end up doing a bit of that myself, just in terms of like making sure that just general production coordination type things with scheduling shoots and making sure the client knows where we're going to be and all that stuff. So I think it's again, it's just like a balancing act between everyone's roles and responsibilities. So just depending on the project, it can kind of flux.
And I think that as a director, the stronger producer you have, the better it is for you, because then you can actually direct and think of purely on the creative side, not to be so much worried about the logistical side, of things that are happening down the line on the shoot or whatever. And that's probably, if you either have to learn to do it yourself or find that partner that's a great, partner to have that's going to take care of you on that end.
I have 2 questions. The first is, what are the things that separate just like a okay director from like a good director, like your top 3 sort of things? The second thing is, I've directed a few short films and I'm looking at directing my first feature next year. So what is your advice for someone directing their first feature?
Good director and okay director. I think I'm going to go with having a clear vision of what you're how you want to tell the story, but being able to communicate that to your crew, to your actors. I think that really separates it from the okay to good director. Being able to communicate that vision and having a clear vision. But it's something like Sean said earlier, it's also, there's an ultimate end goal, but how malleable you are to get to that vision, I think is important.
Yeah, I think it's like good planning versus great planning. Like seriously, it's, I mean, yeah, it's all of those steps, but it's like how much attention you're giving to each of those steps and not, I guess, forgetting that any of them are important.
Yeah.
Show up on time. Bring donuts.
Oh my gosh, yeah, feed your crew.
Feed your crew.
Yeah.
Make it a healthy environment. It's really important to get everybody on board. Remember that you're the director and they're working under you, and respect that, and respect your crew and for what you hired them for their expertise and what they can bring to the project. It's really important to keep that environment going. And it's really hard when you're when you're doing multiple days and things are going wrong, or the weather's not helping you, or somebody said, no, you can't be that loud, where's your permit, things like that. So, yeah, get your ducks in a row before you hit record. So it's really important.
I think and what you said is true. You set the tone, right?
Yeah.
As a director, you set the tone for your set. I've done a lot of producing and stuff, and I had to have a conversation with the director who had a great vision and a great idea on this project we were shooting, but he just went wacko for a couple of days, to the point that his best friend, the DP's like, I'm gonna smack him, right? And I had to pull him aside. I said, listen, I know what you're trying to do, but you could do this two ways. You could lead this, going to the military, you could lead this like a patent and slap everybody into submission to get what you want, or you can lead it to them like George Wallace and inspire them to be part of it and make it even better. You got to pick which one you want to be, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to get much further with this than you are with this, And it's setting that tone, and especially like what he said, when things go wrong, if you freak out, everybody else is going to freak out, right? So the less you freak out, I'm like, all right, cool, it's a challenge. Let's figure out how we're going to get through this challenge. Let's get through this,
I think another part of it, especially with like a longer project, is everyone has to feel like they're actually getting something out of it. So making sure that everyone feels invested and everyone feels like they're getting some benefit, especially if people are working for free. You got to give them something.
Yeah.
So like feel like they're either getting something for their demo reel, or they're just getting great experience, or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, my audio guy used to say, okay, let's make some magic. And I used to remember that. And no matter what the project was, it's magic what we're doing. It's pinch yourself that you're doing this and not something else. Yeah. So keep that attitude in mind, that you're doing something really special and something really important for our culture. So.
And story-wise, going from the short to the full length, I'm assuming you're roughly 90 minutes is what you're looking for, right? That's a challenge, because you got to keep perspective of the whole story, and that arc of that storyline, and visually how you want that arc to work, and all that. It's not that it's easier, but it's in a 5-minute movie, it's a little easier, right? Keeping that perspective, that wider format, is really important, and how there's connective tissue between scenes to scenes in the wider format, and especially when you're shooting them out of order, right? And at different times, like you half finished the scene, you got to come back the next day, making sure your crew base and your talent is remembering where they are and how this is connected to what's happening later in the story, though it's been shot out of order.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one last question. I think in Spokane Film Project, Spokane in general, we have a lot of people who are hungry to move from amateur to professional. So how do you hire your crew, and how do you hire the actors that you use?
I hire a lot of young crew for my projects. So look at the resumes, see if they're active. We've got a list of people that we call on. When I find some people that I work well with, I'll be calling them back. that sort of thing. So, and I know, I mean, one guy that I work with, I try to get him, you know, he just graduated a couple of years ago, and I know if I hear of a job opening for that he might fit, I'll let him know, because he wants to move into something full-time and something more professional, whatever that might be. So,
How does that resume get in front of you for you to look at?
how did it get in front of me?
Yeah, how does someone in our audience get a
He
resume?
dropped it off. He sent it in. Yeah.
In person?
That's the best way.
Well, yeah.
Social media.
Yeah.
No, it pays. I mean, I'm kind of old school, but it pays to see people excited about, or I don't know, the energy of wanting, no matter how inexperienced or naive they might be, that energy of wanting to get into the industry plays big on me. I'd rather have somebody with a lot of energy to wanting to do it and less experience, because they want to learn, than somebody who thinks that. I mean, I used to hire theater people, you know, on my crew more than film people, because the film guys wanted to be producer directors. The theater, they knew how to put together a scaffolding or set up lighting and stuff like that. They didn't say no to things. So so you kind of look for that, and yeah.
Sean, how about you?
I really only look for two things. I look for people who are competent and who have good energy. I mean, that's all you really need. People that have enthusiasm for the work and, just want to be there and get stuff done.
Where do you find those people?
Honestly, it's mostly just through like people I know at this point. I really try to ask people that have worked with before who they would recommend, and so it's a lot of like referrals from referrals sort of thing. It seems to work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Juan, your turn.
I'm at a point in my life where I like to work with people I want to hang out with. So there's a lot of that plays a big part of it. But I'm constantly going to festival events and seeing what filmmakers are doing what and going, hey, that's interesting. I'd like to get to know that person, maybe work with that person. That's most on the crew side and on the creative side. On the acting side, I do try to pay attention a lot to what's happening in our community theater-wise, and also in the commercial stuff, and even the comedy folks, and just people that are like, that sounds like a cool person I'd like to work with, or there's something I saw in their performance like, ooh, there's a project I have, maybe I could pitch it to them, and start working on my small little projects, and then developing into something else.
Do actors need to have agents?
For me, no. But I do tap into the agencies a lot when I'm looking at stuff. I think not to have an agent in this market, it's so small, is silly, because it'll get you exposure faster, right? I mean, a good example, a kid that was in a play I just did, who's doing his capsule movie over at Eastern, had an actor drop out of him at the last minute. He calls me, and I'm like, dude, reach out to agencies, tell them what you're looking for, they can help you find it. And they did. They helped them find somebody to right away. That were willing to do a freebie at the schools. I think you don't need to have an agent, but I think it definitely puts you in a better position, because you'll get more opportunities. Because now that's a whole other art form. Auditioning is an art form, besides actually being an actor is an art form. And the more you're doing it, the more you're getting out there, the stronger you're going to be, the more you're going to get seen, the more references you're going to get. And then there's different times, Sean and I was, looking for someone who can play so-and-so kind of a role. Mm-hmm. And it's like the Rolodex, and we think of people.
So what I'm hearing, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from the advertising side of things, like, we don't have time to do like a week-long search for actors if we're like casting for a commercial. Like, all we have time to do is call the agency and be like, can you have however many people show up on Wednesday, because we need to get this done by next week. So
So what I'm hearing is it's really beneficial for actors and crew to show up at film events and maybe be members of certain organizations that may help them in their craft.
Yes. No,
What are you implying?
wait a minute. The more networking you're doing, the better off you're gonna be. The more people are gonna be aware of you are. And something like, I don't know, there's a group in town that can do something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing? I started out serving pizza to Mark Dahlstrom, who's one of the producers with Z Nation and stuff, and I thought he was a truck driver. It took me just reaching out to him and other people like Tom Deneen to get to where I am right now, and without that, I don't know. All I gotta say is thank you to them and all that, but yes, networking is amazing.
Well, I'd like to thank you all so much. Something I forgot to mention as we started today is Devontae Smith actually is a new board member of Spokane Film Project. And gentlemen, thank you so much for giving up your time. Let's give it up for them. Couple things, if you have not signed up to be a member, again, it's free. We are a nonprofit. We will be hitting the fundraising hard next year, so we can bring you more amazing opportunities like this. But we're so grateful to CMTV, who has partnered with us all year to make this possible. Let's give it up for CMTV. And for those of you who are members or sign up in the very near future, we're sending out a member survey today to find out what you want from us, because your voice matters with Spokane Film Project. So thank you all for coming today. Please be safe out there, make your films, network with everyone in this room before you leave. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice meeting you.